Are you looking for Soothe 2 reviews and alternatives? Welcome to the definitive cut of Soothe 2 alternative reviews. My new video is taking longer than expected, so enjoy this in the meantime. Cheers. Wow, that's really dramatic. This sounds like it was recorded with a better microphone now. Today we're going to take a look at a new alternative to the popular Oak Sound Soothe 2 plugin. It's called Smooth Operator by Baby Audio. But first, please like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and be sure to watch to the end of the video, where I'll tell you which one I recommend, and give you a couple other cheap alternatives to Soothe 2. First up is Soothe 2. This is the plugin that really took the industry by storm and got us all talking about resonance suppression. So is it worth it? Let's check it out. The main section resembles a standard EQ, with some controls on the left that have some familiar and less familiar titles. The cool thing about Soothe 2 is that it comes with a fully interactive tutorial for beginners. Very useful for getting to know this unusual plugin, probably the best walkthrough I've ever used. Let's look at some real-world examples. I'm hearing a sharp resonance in the mid-range, probably around 2 to 3K. This is the same issue I had in my last video where I used TDR Nova to fix a nasty resonance. Check that out in the link above. So I've inserted Soothe 2 and it's already working at the default setting. These notches that are appearing can give you a clue where the problem areas are in your track. So I'll grab the mid note here and solo the band. You can do this by holding Alt. Oh yeah, there it is. So around here is where a nasty resonance lives. I'm going to pull this up. And this will increase the depth of Soothe 2's resonance suppression. Basically, if you turn these nodes up, you'll get more compression at that frequency. If you turn it down, you'll get less. It's like an EQ, except it's controlling the dynamics too. Okay, I think I got the frequency. Let's bypass it. I can definitely hear a big difference there. When I bypass, I hear that whistling resonance come back in. Yeah, that's nice. It's subtle, but it's an important difference. Here you can use the delta to hear only what's being processed. So let's check this out in the mix. Gonna bypass. Yeah, I think that sounds way better. This will all sit much better in a mix, and those pesky resonant frequencies won't build up and mask other instruments or vocals. Now let's try Baby Audio's Smooth Operator on the same track. There are some similarities here in terms of functionality in that we have an EQ section that is the main work area, but Smooth Operator has fewer controls. Both plugins work from a similar foundation though, where the signal is broken up into spectral bands so they can be targeted more precisely. Let's see how Smooth Operator shapes up. So a big difference here is that the center node controls the horizontal line, which acts as a threshold. When I lower this, the more effect is applied. You can see it in the spectral bars up above. Again, like Soothe 2, we can see there's already gain reduction just at the default setting. If I lower this a bit, it'll give me a clue where resonances are occurring. So I can see it's making dips in the low mids and in the mid-range, 1 to 2K. Smooth Operator has 4 nodes. 2 of these are Bell EQ nodes, and you can adjust the width with your mouse wheel. The nodes on either end act more like shelf filters. And unlike Soothe 2, moving a node up means less effect, and moving it down means more effect, as you can see here. So let's try to fix that resonance. You can use solo down below to isolate a band when you hover over it. There's the resonance. I'm going to lower this. Okay, that already sounds better. Okay, let's bypass Smooth Operator. This sounds cleaner now. We can hear that harsh resonance improves when we enable Smooth Operator. I'm hearing at least one more resonance, and this is a moment where I wish I had another bell node to adjust. But Smooth Operator maxes out at 2. Let's compare this to Soothe 2. When I switch back to Soothe 2, the original character of the guitar seems to come through a bit more. Smooth Operator seemed to overly smooth it out, but I was being quite assertive with it. So I'd say overall, Soothe 2 preserves the natural sound a bit more, whereas Baby Audio kind of smooths it out, but they're both really good. I really love what I'm getting from Smooth Operator right now. This is very useful. This vocal has a scratch track that has a bad resonance around 2K, especially at the end of this chorus when the singer holds the word heat for a long time. Let's take a listen.
Did we get it right, leaving love behind? Do you miss the heat?
Right there. Okay, let's insert Soothe.
Do you miss the
Right away I can see Soothe 2 is already working in that area. This actually sounds pretty good at the default setting, but let's raise the mid-range gain and see what happens.
Do you miss the heat? Do you miss the high? Do you fight the rush rising up inside? Did we get
This is definitely helping with the harshness of the vocal. Let's bypass.
Do you miss the high? Do you fight the rush rising up inside? Did we get it right, leaving love behind? Do you miss the heat?
Now with these plugins, resonances can be very subtle and hard to pick out, and like many correction actions, it's better to make small moves. You can adjust the intensity with the depth. I find raising this and lowering the sharpness gave me a more natural sound. All in all, it was quick and easy to get a great sound with Soothe 2. Now let's add Smooth Operator. So you can resize the GUI, which is great. Alright, so if I lower this a bit, right away we see some activity in the mid-range. I'm going to lower the threshold. And you see that dip at 2K. I'm going to adjust the focus here to try to make the cuts more surgical. Yeah, we can use this to take some mud out too, which is great.
Do you miss the high? Do you fight the
Wow, that's really dramatic, switching between the affected and dry signal. This sounds like it was recorded with a better microphone now, and there's a nice silkiness to the high end. Let's compare to Soothe 2.
Did we get it right, leaving love behind? Do you miss the heat?
Right, so Soothe 2 once again sounds a little more subtle, more true to the source. But I find myself missing that brighter tone from Smooth Operator. It was nice to get that tone really quickly from Smooth Operator. I'm impressed. Another cool feature I'll quickly mention is that both plugins support sidechain input. This is very helpful as you can take tracks that occupy similar frequencies and duck one channel with another's spectral footprint. So which plugin do I like better? Soothe 2 or Smooth Operator? Both and neither. It depends on your budget and needs. If you have $200 to spare, then Soothe 2 is the king of the heap. Not only do I find you can target and fix resonances quickly and easily, you have complete control over every parameter of the signal. But to me, it really earns its reputation, and I would find it hard to live without this. Now that being said, Smooth Operator is something of a little miracle. As of this video, it's at an introductory price of just $39, a mere fraction of Soothe 2's price. And Smooth Operator is, by design, very easy to use. Bottom line, Smooth Operator is a no-brainer for beginners and pros alike looking for a quick solution for audio issues. Now, I did miss the advanced features of Soothe 2, and there were times where I almost had the sound where I wanted it, and I needed one more node or a little more control over the behavior. But for $39, you will get great results. I'll definitely be using this a lot in the future. So that's my conclusion. If you have the money and you want more professional level control, hold out for Soothe 2. Or grab Smooth Operator at this price, get familiar working with spectral dynamics, and grab Soothe 2 when it's on sale or when you feel like spending that kind of money. I'm going to cover these plugins in a future video, but here are some affordable spectral balancing options to look at. Hornet's 31 Mark II plugin is a 31-band graphic equalizer that has an auto function, which will analyze the input and try to achieve the maximum harmonic balance. Hornet is an innovative company with inexpensive plugins that routinely go on sale, so check this one out. Perennial indie developer Vox & Go recently released the oddly titled Teote, which is an automatic spectral balancer. Vox & Go makes some of the best plugins in the industry, but also some of the most confusing, and that applies here. You can get some great results out of the box, but they're more subtle, and the controls are difficult for the layperson to understand, but well worth a visit. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and click that bell for notifications. It really helps to grow the channel. Until next time, mix well, pale blue daughters. Is DSEQ better than Soothe 2? DSEQ bills itself as a dynamic spectral equalizer, which puts it in the same league as Soothe 2, Baby Audio Smooth Operator, SmartEQ 3, and other spectral balancing plugins. So let's jump right into a quick demo. But first, please like and subscribe, and watch to the end of the video for my conclusion. DSEQ has a ton of features, but the first thing you need to know is that you can load a starter preset and simply lower the threshold on the left and get results. I loaded up an awful demo I mixed way back in the year 2000 when I was starting out, and it's chock full of nasty resonant frequencies. I mean, just look at this waveform. Can you tell a 29-year-old got his first L2 that year? Let's load up the master balance preset and lower the threshold. That already sounds less harsh. I'm going to turn on auto gain compensation so we're not fooled by the difference in gain. So that just raised the level a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to bypass. To my ears, this sounds much less harsh. If I was in a position where I had to deliver this poor mix to someone, I would feel better about sending it out after letting DSEQ do its thing. So as you can see, you can quickly insert DSEQ, select a preset, and get some usable results. Let's tweak it further. I'm going to switch this preset back from mid-side processing to stereo. So previously, this was acting on only the stereo content, leaving the mono content alone, which is an excellent mastering tool. But in this case, I think because this is such a bad mix, I'm just going to let it run across the entire spectrum. Okay, I'm starting to hear some weird things when I turn it up. So the spectral balance sounds smoother, but it sounds a little ducking overall. Like you can hear the mix is pumping where the dynamic compression is cutting in. And I think this has got to do with the attack and release times. I'm going to increase these. And go 86 on the release. See what this sounds like. So this is going to allow the compression to let some of the original signal through first before it clamps down. So this will hopefully have a more natural sound. So it's definitely pumping a bit more, but again, this mix and master is so bad that you're bound to hear some artifacts when you put some dynamic compression on it. Another simple parameter to adjust in DSEQ is the slope. This adjusts the priority of the dynamic EQs. Higher values mean more high-end compression, and lower values mean more low-end compression. I'm going to lower this to let more of the natural high-end through. I think this release time is too slow. That sounds a bit better. Next, we can turn up the selectivity so that the correction is more focused and doesn't affect neighboring bands as much. Oh, that definitely sounds tighter. I'm not hearing the pumping as much. Cymbals sound a little more natural. We could also turn down the threshold a little further than what sounds natural. So we get maximum balancing. Then use the mix knob to blend it back with the original signal. We can now balance the old and the new for a more natural sound. And bypass. I am using the demo, so it'll cut out once in a while. I think that sounds pretty good for messing around for a few minutes. DSEQ is overflowing with features, and some I'll mention quickly are 2 types of automatic gain compensation, audition for EQ pre-filters, delta button for hearing only the effect, up to 4 times oversampling, and 7 levels of complexity for the FFT filters so you can get more detail. On top of that, there's a Spectral AI that will scan the spectrum of your song and suggest settings. You can even save and load your own spectra if you want to reference a song for your master. Is DSEQ better than Soothe 2? I would say at less than half the price with the same and even some more features, it's a no-brainer. If it's not better, then it's at least a true competitor. Soothe 2 is the industry standard for a reason. It's easy to use, sounds great, and has advanced features for professionals, and it deserves its place at the top. But DSEQ has all those features as well, and a couple of extra tricks up its sleeve. The interface was a little intimidating at first, but a few minutes with the manual made it all pretty straightforward. This is certainly a challenger to Soothe 2 and many miles above Baby Audio's Smooth Operator in terms of features, which I covered in a previous video that you can watch up above. TB Pro Audio DSEQ is a true hidden gem and warrants a serious look from any and all mix and mastering engineers out there. But at €79, this is a real Soothe 2 killer. Be sure to check out my other Soothe 2 and plugin review videos in these links. Please like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Pale Blue Dot Studios. I think I like this balancer mix better than the SmartEQ mix. After looking at Oak Sound's Soothe 2 and Baby Audio's Smooth Operator, now we have a big update to another famous plugin that promises to make mixing easier, Sonable's SmartEQ 3. But first, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and be sure to watch to the end to hear what I think of SmartEQ 3 and find out what free VST plugin is a simple alternative to SmartEQ 3. Okay, let's get right to it. Sonable's SmartEQ 3 is an intelligent EQ that analyzes your signal and attempts to balance it based off of a reference. And what is that reference? Hard to say, but let's find out. One of the classic mix issues that people often ask me about is how to clear up conflict between a sub bass and a kick drum. Let's see if SmartEQ 3 can help with that. I have here a little trap beat I threw together. Let's take a listen. This kick drum stands out pretty well from the sub bass, but what if we had a weaker kick sound and we had to mix it with that sound? Let's find a softer one that blends in a bit more with the bass. Okay, you can hear this kick starts to get lost in the subs now. Let's open up SmartEQ 3 and take a look. So the first thing to know is that SmartEQ 3 can be used like a traditional 24-band equalizer. I can go ahead and double-click and add nodes. So there's a bell curve. I can use the mouse wheel to narrow or widen this band. Create another one here. I already got it sounding better with traditional EQ. Honestly, that could be all it needed to sit in the mix in the first place. But let's see what SmartEQ 3 can do. So all you have to do to use SmartEQ smart filters is select a profile. I'll switch to a blank slate here. SmartEQ can store up to 8 different states. And I'll choose kick from the profile. Then you hit the big green button and it'll analyze the signal. And this creates a new EQ profile with a weighted curve that you can use to increase or decrease the amount of EQ in the signal. If I hold down Shift, this keeps it in place vertically, so it doesn't slide around when I move it. So that's maximum EQ processing. And that's minimal. You can even go reverse if you want. Bring up more of the bad stuff. Set that around there. This is interesting. So it did something similar to what I would do. Boost a bit in the lows, cut out some low mids, and added some high mids for clarity. Then a massive strange roll-off on the top. I guess it just wants to remove the highs completely, but the edge of the weighted curve prevents that from being a complete roll-off. I could, of course, just add a high cut filter here if I wanted to. But we'll just leave it as is. Something to note, SmartEQ is adding a lot of gain here with some pretty big boosts. I'm going to lower the output level to match so our ears aren't getting fooled by just the gain change. There we go, it's a bit closer. All right, let's add SmartEQ to the sub bass now. I'll select bass and then let it analyze again. So it did some smaller adjustments to the sub bass, I guess because it already sounds too good. Let's bypass SmartEQ. Obviously the biggest difference is in the kick here. Let's add SmartEQ to the snare now, and then we can look at SmartEQ's killer feature right after that. Select snare here and analyze. My prediction, it'll add a little bit of low end and scoop out some mid. And add some high. Hello, friend. Oh wow, really went crazy on the low end. Let's check this out. So this brings us to the truly unique feature of SmartEQ 3, group mixing. You can create groups of up to 6 tracks, and each instance of SmartEQ will work together to detect and fix masking effects. The EQ instances can also be stacked in order of importance, so your drums can be loudest, for instance. Let's try it out. You create a group by clicking Join Group in the upper left. You can name the group here. Now we see this track has been turned into a little rectangle with a mini view of the spectrum and EQ curve. Now in the lower left, we see all the other instances of SmartEQ. You can drag these onto the 3 layers. The instances at the top will get priority, and the opposite is true of the bottom. They'll sit back in the mix a bit more. So we'll move the kick up to the top. Okay, so right now, all 5 instances here are communicating with each other and adjusting the EQs to compensate for what the priority is. Let's bypass this. Let's bypass the EQs altogether to see what it originally sounded like. It sounds a little better. I'd like to hear that kick up front a bit more, so something you can do is adjust the group impact, which will increase the effect of the cross-channel processing. Let's raise this up here. Okay, so the kick is really starting to stick out there. Let's see what it sounds like if we move the kick to the bottom and say we want the sub bass to be the star. Yeah, you can definitely hear the sub is right out front and louder now. If you love your 808s up front, this is a trick for you. Let's move the sub back down and put the kick back up top. Let's bypass this. Check out the totally dry mix. Okay, so there's a huge difference now between the SmartEQ mix and the dry mix. There's no question that SmartEQ was able to get that lackluster kick sitting well with the sub. I would say the sub bass has lost a little bit of that cool saturation edge, so I would go back in and manually add that with the EQ, or split the weighted curve again and lower the processing on the mids. It is very cool how it can do this, how the EQs can crosstalk to each other, and you can arrange clarity within the hierarchy of layers. But I do have to ask myself, couldn't I just get here with EQ and gain? I wish this had automatic gain compensation so it was easier to make this call. All in all, I enjoyed this plugin, and it has some really innovative ideas going on here. I could see reaching for this if I was hitting a dead end in a mix and wanted to get a fresh perspective, or help tracks stand out in a nightmare mix. What bothers me about a plugin like this though, what is the ideal reference? I find myself wishing there were more specific references in the plugin like 808 bass or high synth part. I kept winding up with massive low-end EQ boosts that didn't make any sense, but I suppose that is when we have to put our engineer's hat on and just adjust it ourselves. Which brings me back to the bottom line. You can get results from SmartEQ pretty easily, but you still need to adjust it with your ears and technical judgment to get good results. The more I used SmartEQ and got used to its way of thinking, the more it grew on me. But I would be concerned about recommending this to novice mixers. The idea that you can just hit the ideal preset and let AI mix your tracks is disturbing, and I don't think we're at that point yet. I'd recommend this to professionals who want to experiment with that last 5% of their mix, or for intermediate producers who may need some help with masking and complex mixes. It might be instructive about where issues lay in your mix. But again, nothing replaces good technique. The kick drum in this song was easily fixed by swapping out the drum sample. That's it. No complex, intelligent mix routing required. So for those of you who don't want to spend 89 euros on SmartEQ 3, did you know there's a free version of this by Sonable? It's called Balancer. Anyone can download it for free right now at Sonable's website as part of their stay-at-home package. This one is super simple and works just like SmartEQ. You select your profile, let it learn your track, then you can choose from warm, neutral, or bright and adjust the intensity of the processing. I found this to be really good on mid-range material like guitars and vocals, but try it out and let me know in the comments below what you think. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching to the end of the video. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and are there any other plugins like this that you'd like me to review? Thanks for watching. Bye. Well, I don't believe it, but I think I like this balancer mix better than the SmartEQ mix. Due to popular demand, I'm going to take a look at two Izotope Spectral balancing plugins, Ozone 9 Spectral Shaper and Neutron 3 Sculptor, and compare them to Soothe 2, plus some other options, including Smooth Operator. But first, please like and subscribe, and watch to the end for my final thoughts and recommendations. It really helps the channel a lot. Let's start with Izotope Neutron 3 Sculptor. Neutron 3 is designed to be a kind of automatic mixing assistant, and Sculptor is supposed to give you that final polish on tracks. Like all the plugins here, it claims to remove muddiness and reduce harshness, so let's take a look. I'm going to start with the same project I used for my Soothe 2 versus Smooth operator video, link up above. This project has a clean guitar with a nasty resonance around 3K, so let's see how Sculptor deals with it. In case the resonance isn't obvious, here's a sharp cut at 3K. So I'll insert Sculptor. The interface is very straightforward. You choose your instrument from the list, and Sculptor will instantly create an EQ curve based off its reference. The gray analyzer spectrum is the incoming signal, and the orange display is the effect that Sculptor is applying to that signal. This is pretty helpful so you can see exactly what Sculptor is doing to the signal. In this case, it applied a pretty radical spectral curve to this guitar. Not exactly what I had in mind, with a lot of highs rolled off and a huge bump in the low mids. Let's try to adjust this. There aren't many controls in Sculptor. The first dial controls the strength of the spectral correction. The second one controls the tone, i.e. up is more high end, down is more low end. And speed controls the attack and release of the processing. Faster and slower response times can be dialed in for more natural results. Raising the intensity to 100 just results in a muffled, overcompressed mush. Obviously this is way too much. Let's put that back to 50. Since the signal is pretty muted now, I'll use the tone to brighten up the guitar a bit. Let's bypass. Quick note here, this plugin defaults to true bypass, which turns off all the latency and CPU processing by the plugin when it's bypassed. This is good for saving processing power, but creates a nasty dropout when bypassing, and makes A/B comparison difficult. This is also the only way to enable the auto gain matching feature, which I love to have enabled, so you're not fooled by gain differences, but you have to go into the settings here to switch that on or off. Let's try bypassing again. I mean, this is very muffled sounding. I'm going to try switching profiles here. It actually sounds a little better with distorted electric. Bypass. Interesting, it does sound a little smoother. Let's check it out in the mix. It has definitely lost some of its more wild frequencies. I can see this hole that it's carved out here in the mid-range helping vocals and other instruments clash less in the mix. It didn't really get that 3K resonance though that I was hoping it would get. Another option we can do here is really exaggerate Sculptor's correction, then dial in the dry signal down here on the right. So here's what Sculptor is doing. After a little digging, I was able to determine that Sculptor is indeed a 32-band dynamic EQ that automatically adjusts thresholds and reduction levels. That's straight from an Izotope video. So it's basically doing this. I mocked this up in FabFilter Pro Q3. Each of these parametric EQ filters is set to dynamic mode, compressing frequencies in that EQ range. You can even see how the main spectral display of the signal is reacting similarly to Neutron Sculptor. What Neutron Sculptor is doing is changing each of these thresholds and reduction levels constantly to match its reference. That'd be a lot of work to automate in Pro Q. The closest analogy to what Sculptor is doing is like loading a reference EQ profile, such as with Pro Q's Match EQ function. So imagine this is the most perfect guitar signal ever created. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it to the standard 8. So then it crafts an EQ curve to make the target track sound more like that reference EQ. Then you take all these EQ points, set them to dynamic, and so now these dynamically react to the income signal. Main difference is Sculptor also changes these levels. Changes the depths of the EQ, the threshold, and the attack and release times. So you can get similar results with a complex dynamic EQ, but there's no way you could dynamically change the EQ parameters constantly to match the source. This could explain why it sounds a little smoother than when I tried to simply match it with dynamic EQ alone. I actually think I could get closer to fixing the guitar with Pro Q's dynamic EQs where I can actually select in and zero on specific regions than I could with Neutron Sculptor, although you can get some good results with Neutron Sculptor here, so it definitely takes some tweaking to get there. Let's quickly compare it to a couple other spectral balancing plugins. Here's DSEQ. And here's Baby Audio's Smooth Operator. And here's Soothe 2 from my previous video. I can definitely hear a big difference there. When I bypass, I hear that whistling resonance come back in. Now let's move on to Ozone Spectral Shaper. So this begs the question, is Spectral Shaper any different than Sculptor? The answer is yes. While both are designed to tame problem frequencies, Spectral Shaper is more narrowly focused than Sculptor. Spectral Shaper seems more geared towards fixing overly bright instruments in specific regions. It also does not have any simplified graphic cues like guitar or vocal, and the user has to decide on the frequency range themselves, positioning this more as a professional plugin, which makes sense being part of the Ozone mastering suite. This is similar to a de-esser or a multiband compressor in that it focuses spectral correction in a defined range. You can use the handles to narrow or widen the range. Let's try it out on this scratch vocal that has some plosive mid-range frequencies.
Did we get it right, leaving love behind? Do you miss the heat? Do you miss
You can solo the frequency range with the S button here. The default setting actually sounds pretty much exactly the region that I wanted, and you can really hear it when she holds the word heat. Right there. You can see the thresholds even at 0 is starting to kick in there. So now we can use this like a compressor.
Do you miss the heat?
And you can choose between light,
Miss the high?
medium,
Do you
or heavy processing.
rush rising up
And just use the threshold here to
inside?
determine when the
Did we
processing
get
kicks in.
it right, leaving love behind? Do you miss the heat? Do you miss the high? Do you fight the rush rising up inside?
So we can hear the mid-range gets darker as we lower the slider. You can use the listen button here to hear the delta or the affected signal. So we're hearing only that problem frequency range right now. I can hear it's really catching that last problematic note, so that's good. Let's hear it in the mix. This also has gain match, which is excellent. Again, the gain will be adjusted so we can make a better decision about the processing. Let's solo it.
Do you miss the heat?
Okay, so this definitely sounds smoother. I would want to EQ this a bit more to get it to sit right, because it seems a little soft now. But I can work with this. So I'm not sure if Spectral Shaper uses similar dynamic EQ banks as Sculptor, or if it's a multiband compressor. The way it functions reminds me of a multiband compressor, where you can limit the frequency range. Just for a test, I tried using Cubase's stock multiband compressor to compress the same offensive frequency region. And I can get fairly close.
Do you miss the high? Do you fight the rush rising up
Let's jump to that
inside?
last note.
Did we get? Do you miss the heat? Do you miss the heat? Do you miss the heat?
Spectral Shapers seem to tame the harshness more transparently, without as much pumping. Of course, the great thing about a multiband compressor is that I can start compressing neighboring bands if I want.
Do you fight the rush?
Or I can go ahead and boost the highs.
Inside? Did we get it right? Leaving love behind.
There's only one band in Spectral Shaper, which I find a little bit limiting. That being said, Spectral Shaper sounds quite good. It seemed to get that annoying radio tone in the voice under control without pumping as much as the other compressor. Let's try Smooth Operator really quickly.
Do you miss the high? Do you fight the rush rising up inside? Did we get it right? Leaving love behind. Do you miss the heat? Miss the heat?
And let's compare it to the previous video with Soothe 2.
Do you miss the high? Do you fight the rush rising up inside? Did we get it right? Leaving love behind. Do you miss the heat?
I'll confess, despite being a long-time RX user, I've never warmed up much to Izotope's other offerings. The interfaces I find minimal in an annoying way, the automatic stuff is often too harsh sounding, and the preset system makes me want to punch clowns. They never quite click with me. But after using these plugins for a while, I would recommend Ozone owners take a hard look at these Spectral tools. And new users might want to dive in if there's a good special on, and there's always a special on Izotope products, right? I'm going to add a similar caveat as in my previous SmartEQ video. With both Sculptor and Spectral Shaper, I had to use my judgment and take time to dial good settings in. So these aren't simply push a button and go plugins, and beginners should not be cheating with these unless they're willing to take the time, use their ears, and tweak them a bit. As for how it stacks up to the mighty Soothe 2, I don't see these as quite the same as Soothe 2. Soothe 2 can narrow in on resonances more precisely than either of these plugins. Perhaps Spectral Shaper is the closest, as you could really narrow the band, but you only have one band, with only minimal tonal control. It's like a broad, one-trick Soothe pony, but it can be quite effective. Then again, Smooth Operator is effective too, and that's cheap as hell, and it sounded great on the vocal. That's all for this week. What did you think of these plugins? Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in spectral balancing plugins, be sure to check out my other videos on Soothe 2, Smooth Operator, and DSEQ. Link up above. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Well, voila, you got yourself a resonance fixer. Let's check it against Soothe 2. Today we're going to take a look at another popular spectral balancing plugin, Gullfoss by Sound Theory. Let's get right to it. But first, please like and subscribe. Hit that bell button to get notifications for new shows, and please watch to the end to hear my conclusion. Gullfoss is an interesting beast. Like many of the spectral correction plugins I've been reviewing lately, Gullfoss claims to help clear up problems with mixes and tracks with a proprietary EQ process. The emphasis with Gullfoss seems to be more on increasing clarity and solving masking issues rather than resonances, like with Oak Sound Soothe 2, although as we'll see, I think it can be used for that as well. Gullfoss employs a unique technology called the Computational Auditory Perception Model, developed by an actual real physicist. Sound Theory have emphasized that this is not an artificial intelligence or a dynamic EQ. It's more like an EQ that adjusts itself constantly, up to 300 times per second, while maintaining phase coherence and increasing clarity in the source. Basically, Gullfoss has a formula to make things sound better. Bold claims. Let's dive in and check it out. The interface settings can be a little hard to understand at first. Here's what you need to know about Gullfoss. Recover. You can turn this up if you want to bring up details that are hard to hear, say like a swampy kick drum. Tame. You can turn this up to control frequencies that are getting out of hand and dominating the mix, such as too many mid-range guitars. Bias. This tilts the EQ towards recover or tame. This is probably the hardest control to understand. Sound Theory says this should be used when you're not totally sure if you want more recover or more tame. Like many things in Gullfoss, you just kind of have to tweak it and see what works. Brighten. This is more straightforward. If you hear the EQ is getting too bright or dark, you can compensate with this setting. Boost. This raises the low end and softens the mid-range. This goes below 0, so you can do the opposite. Roll off low end and raise the mid-range. So you can probably guess that these are powerful mixing and especially mastering tools. Let's hear Gullfoss in action. So I've got a full mix here that's pretty much done, but I feel like it needs that last 5 to 10% of polish. There's a bit of low and mid-range action going on that is masking things in certain places. I'll start with recover. And I can hear the kick drum seems to come up a bit. Let's raise this further. And we can hear that low end really comes up there. I actually kind of like what it's doing here. Let's bypass. That's a pretty big difference. I have a reference track here. Let's A/B with that. And here's the track with no Gullfoss. Gullfoss back on. Okay, I'm going to lower the recover a bit. This sounds a little unnatural. Okay, so I like what Gullfoss has brought into this. But it does sound a little dark now. Let's add some tame into the mix. Okay, so this seems to add a little more mid-range information and high-end to the mix. We can adjust the high-end over here with the brighten control. That's pretty sensitive. A little goes a long way with this. Things can get pretty dark or bright quickly. Bring the tame down a bit. Leave that around -4. Okay, so I think this is sounding a little clearer. The mix actually sounds a little warmer, with instruments sitting a little better in the mix. But check out the break. This is where I heard the most dramatic difference. All the instruments drop out and some strings come in here. Check that out, you hear all that detail come back in on the strings? Wow. That's great, I really like that. What I find fascinating is that when I bypass it, the mid-range in the vocal seems to jump out more. Then when I activate it, the vocal curls back into the mix, fighting with the guitar less. The mix sounds more glued. Let's check it out. It's subtle, but this is pretty powerful. It'd be something to be careful of. If you overdo this, you could sink the vocal too far back into the mix. Lastly, we have the boost control. My initial guess was that this was some type of maximizer, but it's more like a SmartEQ curve, kind of a Fletcher Munson curve. Boost is the bass, cutting the mids, and I think a little bump in the highs. Yeah, the mix already has plenty of lows. Let's keep this maybe at like a 1 dB. An AB with the reference. Again, we're not trying to get this mix to sound exactly like Coldplay or anything, but just kind of give me an idea of what I'm going for. And I think this gets it closer to it. Another great feature, which I'm not going to miss this time, is that you have vertical handles on each side that limit processing. I think Gullfoss might be processing the highs a little too aggressively, so I'm going to drag this handle in. And we can see, you can actually see the processing coming down here. There, that sounds better. You can do the same with the low end. If you're happy with your low end, you can tell Gullfoss not to touch that. And you can even invert these, so the processing is only happening in the margins. Great if you're really happy with the mix already and you just want to do stuff on the outsides of it. Something else to note, the correlation meter right below the spectral display shows you if your processing is making the signal brighter or darker than the original. This is really helpful to keep track of how drastic your overall changes are. The meters on the right show you how much recover and tame is happening to the mix. And just to the right of that is the net effect of both tame and recover. So both tame and recovering can be happening at the same time, but that kind of overall global effect on the mix is shown on the leftmost correlation meter. There, so in a few moves, we can take a mix and punch it up a bit. Pretty exciting. Let's quickly try this out on my ongoing comparison with Soothe 2. And no Pale Blue Dot video would be complete without a Soothe 2 comparison. So here's that guitar from my other videos with the nasty 3K resonance. Let's insert Gullfoss and crank the tame setting. Let's bypass. That's a lot better. I'm going to restrict the processing to the problem area. Try to retain more of the guitar's natural tone. Voila, you've got yourself a resonance fixer. Let's check it against Soothe 2. So what's the final word on Gullfoss? I will admit that initially I was a little confused and underwhelmed with Gullfoss when I first tried it out. The results can be quite subtle, which I'm sure is not what some of us had in mind when we want something like an intelligent EQ to fix our problems for us. But I think it's that subtlety and graceful power that makes this a truly valuable plugin. In the end, I would be reaching for this most often for mastering purposes, as in my first example. This can really help with that last 5 to 10% of the master. Do some light balancing that can help it translate better to listeners. I found it useful on single instruments too, but it's on complex program material that it truly shines. Now this is a plugin that's priced for professionals at $200 American, so keep that in mind when deciding if this is right for you. Possibly more than any other spectral balancing plugin I've used, with Gullfoss you have to listen and dial in and balance the signal yourself. Even though it's doing its 300 EQ calculations per second, you still need to tell it when that's too much or too little, because the controls are simple, but unusual. Again, I recommend beginners stick with learning EQ and mixing fundamentals before shelling out $200 for a quick fix that might disappoint them. But I encourage everyone to try the demo and see if it works for you. For me, it's become an indispensable part of my mastering chain, giving that final bit of clarity on mixes and masters. That's all for this episode. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe and hit that bell. It's been a while since my last spectral correction video. This week I'll profile a brand new resonance suppressor from the people at Mastering the Mix, called RESO, and they're the makers of innovative plugins like Bassroom and Expose. The spectral correction market is really heating up, so let's check this out. But first, please like and subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. My goal is to hit 2,000 subscribers this month. If you want to support the channel, head over to ADSR with my affiliate link and pick up some of the great audio plugins there. And sign up for my newsletter to get free samples and info on my upcoming mini course on getting separation in your mix at palebluedot.ca. Alright, so I have a project here where I know there are some strong resonance issues happening. I previously dealt with this by slapping TDR Nova on the track. Let's see how RESO can help out. So when I play back this track, I'm hearing a telltale whistling sound, a static, annoying frequency in the crucial mid-range area. It's things like this that can completely mess up a mix, and you get the car stereo effect, where your mix doesn't translate well because you haven't taken care of fundamental issues like resonances and masking. So normally, I would sweep around with an EQ or dynamic EQ and find the whistle and then make a cut. Let's see if RESO can help. So we're greeted with a pretty simple GUI here. Spectrum Analyzer and some icons up top. RESO is designed to be quick and easy, and here's what you do. You gotta hit Calculate Targets, and instantly RESO gives you suggestions for both the potential problem frequencies and the best gain reduction to achieve a transparent correction. Now at first, I expected this to be more like Soothe 2 or DSEQ, where the correction happens right away, but RESO takes a different tack. The suggestions remain bypassed unless you enable them manually, or even more easily just hit Engage Targets. And now the spectral correction is engaged, and it's making cuts at the suggested filter targets. Going to bypass. You can bypass by hitting targets engaged here. And that changes to engage targets. Right off the bat, I'll say this is a rather conservative sounding plugin compared to the others. Or perhaps it's more transparent. The suggestions look like pretty strong cuts because they're quite low down here, but it doesn't seem to be doing much in the reduction meter up top. However, if we look at the right, some of these cuts are pretty deep. In terms of decibels, I mean, I assume this is a decibel scale. This looks like peak decibels. So this one here, around 1K, is sometimes going as low as 10, 15 dB. Kind of hard to tell with the way this is laid out. But to my ears, it's definitely more careful sounding than even Soothe 2. I think a difference is that Soothe 2 and DSEQ have much more detailed control over the whole aspect of this. Well, at least at first sight. There are similar controls on this plugin here. You can use the EQ nodes to increase or decrease the amount of correction. And you can change the Q width of the filter by using your mouse to focus the filter more, or make it really wide. I increase the gain here so we can see that. Oddly, the mouse isn't a very smooth control. It seems to go from 0 to 100. I have to be very, very slow with my magic mouse while I do this, or else it goes full width. Wouldn't mind seeing that a bit smoother. I mean, it's unclear to me at this point if there's any way to change the Q apart from using the mouse. Maybe this will be more clear when the manual is released. I find more than most of the other spectral resonance correction plugins I've used that even going for drastic cuts don't sound as dramatic or artifacty as most of the other plugins I've tried. This is probably a good sign, but I suspect first-time users might be a little disappointed when they don't hear instant dramatic results right away, especially if you missed that you need to hit that Enable All button after the initial scan, so you have to engage the targets to get the reduction happening. I'm not hearing enough correction of the guitar resonance that I want to get rid of, so I'm going to try to dial this in manually. It's going to delete all the nodes, so we have a blank slate again. And I know the resonance is around 3K, 3.2K. So if I hit Control, this turns into a sweep function. You can also do that by enabling the switch up here. Let's add a node here. See, I've dragged this down as far as I can go. So it's down at minus 80, but there's no way that's minus 80 of a threshold? This is a little confusing. I'm only seeing, I guess it's about 10 dB of reduction. It's still kind of unclear to me, so get this back to around 3K. Solo that. Sounds like the right frequency. I'm going to try making it wider. Okay, that's more dramatic. See, it's hard to get the in-between. I can leave it like that, and let's raise this. If you hold down Control, that restricts horizontal movement, so you can only adjust the gain reduction in that band. Oh, that sounds pretty good. Bypass? Oh yeah. There. Whistling gone. Yeah, that's cleaning it up nicely. Okay. So I can see why they give you suggested nodes. Then it's up to you to choose which to activate, because many of the suggestions seem superfluous and can be ignored. Personally, I would have preferred that the suggested targets simply activate right after the scan, and then the user can choose which nodes to disable, especially since it's so transparent and gentle. It'd be different if it was like SmartEQ that suggests a rather radical adjustment of your track, but since this plugin suggests not only EQ but the levels of that EQ, then I'd like to hear its suggestion first and then adjust it by ear. But I think I understand their philosophy. Let's see how this guitar correction stands up to other tools I would normally reach for. So here's TDR Nova. Saw me dial this in earlier. Like I mentioned earlier, I just swept around 3K and then adjusted the threshold, which makes the EQ dynamic. And just lower the threshold until the resonance sounds better. And I think this sounds quite good. And it's quick and easy to do. This took all of 5-10 seconds. Bypass. Yeah, that fixes it up nicely. Let's activate RESO. Well, with my manual adjusted setting in RESO, I'm getting pretty much the same result. What I'm not crazy about is the cramp controls. The solo, bypass, and remove buttons are all very small and close together. Now let's check everyone's favorite, Soothe 2. So the difference here is I can hear right away that Soothe 2 is already working to suppress the resonance. I'd like to hear a little more suppression. Let's increase the depth until it sounds like too much. Right about there. Dial it back. Let's compare it. I have to say, RESO clears this up a little better than Soothe 2 in this quick test. I can still hear a little of that 3K whistling when I activate Soothe 2. Good job, RESO. And TDR Nova too, of course. Yeah, I'd say these are all pretty close. RESO can get you there, but you definitely need to get in there and adjust things. To me, it seems like it may generate too many nodes, and many of them can be ignored. But it's very effective if you want to take the time to dial in the spectral correction yourself. What I like about RESO is that you can open it up, hit a button, and you get suggested nodes instantly that you can then listen to and adjust to get what you want. It was easy enough to sweep and dial in the correction I wanted. However, I do feel like there are some user interface elements that are holding it back. First off, the aforementioned tight space for the node controls is a little hard to work with. Secondly, unless I'm missing it, I would have liked to have an internal bypass button. So what's my recommendation? RESO is certainly worth checking out. The milder settings might work well for those looking for ultra-transparent, careful resonance reduction. And something to keep in mind, this is now at an introductory price of $79, and that's about a third of Soothe 2. So, much like DSEQ, this is a relatively affordable spectral resonance solution. Personally, I preferred DSEQ's interface and comprehensive controls, but definitely give RESO a shot. It might be perfect for you. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and head over to my website, paleblue.ca, and sign up for my newsletter. Until next time, mix well. Hello, Pale Blue Daughters. RESO has a new update. I recently reviewed RESO, link up above, and I was using a pre-release version of the plugin. They just released their first important update, so I wanted to revisit it with the new features. Let's dive in. But first, please like and subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Plus, I've started a Patreon where you can get early video views, mixed feedback, and other benefits. Check it out, and head over to paleblue.ca for free goodies and information on my upcoming mini-course. In my original review, one of the main issues with RESO was that it didn't sound like it was doing much when I engaged the targets. Even lowering the nodes didn't make much of a difference, leading me to wonder if the plugin is just too subtle for most users. I found that I got the best results by finding my own resonance, then increasing the filter Q width to hear more appreciable results. But in this new 1.01 update, mastering the mix tweaked the EQ width a little bit, so when you engage the targets, you actually hear a bit more of a difference. Let's check it out on a nasty mix. RESO needs to analyze the audio and set its targets. There, and now we hit engage targets. And we can definitely hear it making some big changes here. And we can see there are some huge dips here in the mids and the highs if we bypass. We can really hear those resonances now when we bypass. I think this is a big improvement, but it sounds like a little too much, so I'm going to adjust the nodes to decrease attenuation. And that's where the next part of the update comes in handy. Since RESO doesn't have a threshold per se, to make global reduction changes, you have to group all the faders by drag selecting them, then move them in unison. The problem with RESO 1.0 was that the nodes would not move uniformly. After a certain point, the nodes would start flattening out, and you lose the relative balance between the target nodes. This would essentially ruin the careful work you've been doing, and you'd have to start over. But now, ganging the faders has improved. I can raise and lower them all at the same time, and they maintain their relative positions. However, I found that if you hit the edges of the display, once again the EQ nodes start evening out and will eventually all have the same gain. Just so I know I'm not going bananas, let's check this behavior in a similar plugin. Oh, let's say Soothe 2? Alright, so here when I select all the EQ nodes and move them together, I can see they perfectly retain their relative positions. Even if I smash them all around the edges, Soothe 2 always retains perfect relativity between the nodes. So this is what I expect RESO to do. Now, to be clear, it's not that likely that you'll want to make relative adjustments so severe that you need to use the vertical limits of the screen. But it could pose a problem if you have one very deep cut and need to pull the whole EQ curve down. There we go, back to flat. This is why I'd like to see a global threshold parameter to make things like this quick and easy. My first instinct when I opened the plugin was to grab the red bar up top and pull it down, but alas, it doesn't work that way. However, I'm very happy to see the relative target nodes moving together in unison. The strange behavior with relative unison moving is not a deal breaker, and I'll bring it to the developer's attention. Another improvement is that the Q width adjustments are much smoother with the mouse wheel now. It seemed to be very 0 to 100 before, but now it responds as expected. I'm moving the mouse up and down, and this is quite smooth. I can control it much more easily. They even included an option in the preferences to have a slower setting for mouse wheel speed, so that's great to see. Plus, there are some more under-the-hood adjustments, like increased compatibility with Wavelab. Good news for me. Now that Mastering the Mix have made some crucial adjustments to RESO, I can recommend it more strongly as a resonance suppressor alternative to Soothe 2 and DSEQ. I still have some issues with the interface, and I find that this is usually the case with their plugins. But I think most users will be pleased with the results they hear right away, with minimal fuss. And you can pick RESO up right now at ADSR for only $59, which is even cheaper than the discount at Mastering the Mix's site. This puts it in the same price range as Smooth Operator, but you get more filter nodes with RESO. Use my affiliate link below and support the channel. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and head over to palebluedot.ca and sign up for my newsletter. Plus you can get information on my new mini course about mixing. Until next time, mix well. What's that? A new plugin that claims to tame harshness? PaleBlueDot has heard the call and shall respond. Today we'll look at Wavegrove Vastaus versus Soothe 2, the champion of taming harshness in mixes. But first, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below if you think this is an essential plugin. And head over to palebluedot.ca for freebies and audio information. Let's try this out on my old awful mix from the 90s that I used in a previous video. Ugh, my ears. I'm sure you can clearly hear a lot of harshness in the mids and high mids. Not a balanced mix at all. I probably just ran the whole thing through the original version of T-Rax. Anyway, let's insert Vastaus. Whoa, okay, that's aggressive right out of the box. The interface is a little different than expected too. It looks more like a hardware emulation than a spectral correction device, but that's no matter. Let's zero some of these parameters. I hate it when a correction plugin loads up with a randomly active preset. And this has an input gain, and I'm not totally sure why you'd need to drive a frequency taming plugin. Even with oversampling, which this has, why would you want to add harmonic content to a corrected signal? Ugh, that does not sound good. Odd choice. I'm gonna leave this at 0. Okay, so even with tame at 0, it's heavily rolling off the highs, like at obscene levels. I would prefer that 0 be closer to 0 effect than what sounds like 50% on. Speaking of, there's a wet-dry knob as well. Again, not sure why this wouldn't be at 100% by default, but I suppose it speaks to the developer's intended use. Okay, this is weird. If I pull this to 100%, the highs come back in. Bring it back to 50%, the highs disappear. But if I leave it at 0, the highs come back in from the original signal. I would have expected 100% to have the more drastic sound, the more processed sound. It raises my eyebrows a bit that the highs go missing when it's blended in. Makes me suspect phase issues. Okay, and so there's a bias knob as well. According to Wavegrove, this limits the effect to either the positive or negative side of the audio samples. Which, I'm not totally sure what they're meaning here. Turning it clockwise or counterclockwise at 100% wet seems to brighten the signal. They infer it's like an exciter, so maybe it adds some odd or even harmonics. Maybe that's what they're trying to say. At any rate, it does bring back some highs, but I guess these are artificial highs? There's a delta button here too, so you can hear the difference between what's being processed. Let's hear what it's doing to the signal. I mean, call me crazy, but this sounds like a broadband high-pass filter to me. I found the best that I can make this sound was by kind of balancing the tame and the wet knobs. But look, at the end of the day, here's how you can make your own harshness suppressor. Insert an equalizer, any will do. Add a high-cut filter. Done. Now let's compare it to Soothe 2. Insert Soothe 2. Adjust the depth. Done. A much more natural harshness correction, I think. Mind you, I know, Vastaus is free, and Soothe 2 is like $5 million. I just wanted to compare it to something that actually does frequency deharshing. Hell, if I was going for free, I'd rather use something like Analog Obsession's Relife plugin. A cool little freebie that gives your audio a sweet hi-fi quality to it. Or grab your DAW's free multiband compressor and compress some of the harshness yourself. Easy. On the affordable end, there's always Smooth Operator, and while RESO is not my favorite resonance suppressor, it gets the job done. Check out my reviews in the links below. So it's nice to have another deharshness plugin on the market, but this one just isn't for me. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and head over to palebluedot.ca and sign up for my newsletter and get some nice freebies. Until next time, mix well. Today, I'm going to focus on a longtime favorite of mine for fixing harshness, a secret weapon from Plugin Alliance called BX Refinement. And it's often on sale for as low as $29. Could it be a simple, affordable alternative to things like Soothe 2? Let's find out. But first, please like and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon below. Plus, you can get awesome plugin deals at Plugin Boutique with my affiliate link, and head over to palebluedot.ca for freebies. The main impetus behind BX Refinement was to fix harshness that can occur during mastering, especially with loud mixes during the height of the loudness war. That's my most common use for it, and it can be a real snap to address that digital haze that can separate an amateur mix from a pro mix. Let's explore the interface while we fix a mix. So I have a heavy mix here with lots of guitars and mid-range vocals flying around. So the first thing you want to do is adjust the damping dial. You can hear the difference pretty quickly, so I'll just pull this up until you hear an improvement. And what's really useful here is they have a solo button here so you can hear what frequencies are being affected. Yeah, that sounds exactly like where I would expect the problem frequencies to be, around the 2 to 3K zone. Let's bypass. Okay, so you can really hear that almost white noise tone come back when I bypass. It makes me wonder how I could have missed this the whole time. There's a lot of masking going on that will sound awful in the outside world and hide crucial parts from the mix. Let's A/B with another mix to see if we've gotten closer to getting an ideal deharshing zone here. I have to say, BX Refinement got this mix much closer to the reference than before. BX Refinement has really carved out some space, creating a more sense of depth in the mix. This is funny because now I'm hearing a resonance in the commercial master now. But this can be a reminder not to overdo it in the harshness correction. You're always going to have some resonance with guitars, and that can be a crucial part of the tone as well, so use your judgment. So now that we've rolled off some harshness, you can further refine the settings. If you want the deharshing to be more focused on a narrow frequency range, you can choose between soft and hard. In this mix, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. The next important section is the dynamic section. Activate this and you can get finer control over the range, or the amount of reduction, and the speed, or how quickly the reduction occurs, like the release time on a compressor. The meter on the right shows you how the dynamic reduction is being applied and how quickly. When I turn this on, it sounds a little darker, so it sounds like it's working more heavily. I find if I increase the speed and lower the range, it gets it back to a more reasonable setting. It's worth spending time tweaking these settings, as it can result in a more natural sounding harshness reduction that will ideally reduce only the most plosive frequencies. Again, you can solo to hear what it's doing. Another thing you can do here is blend the wet and dry signal. A good technique to try is to exaggerate the harshness correction, then mix in some of the dry signal for a more natural tone. Now you may have noticed that adding significant reduction tends to dampen the signal. The highs roll off a bit. This is really obvious at high settings. So to counter this, they added a presence band to add some sheen back into it. This is a tuned high shell filter that is designed to actually be exaggerated and work in concert with the dampening section and dynamics. In other words, you can lean in hard on the damping to reduce harshness and make up the highs with a presence dial. Let's hear it in action. Let's add some saturation. The saturation adds subtle warmth and a bit of brightness, so keep that in mind when adjusting. There. I think this has turned into a really smooth, analog-sounding master now. And quickly, let's try BX refinement out on a single instrument. And there you go, with a single turn of a dial, you've got a cleaner guitar part that can sit in your mix without grating, masking frequencies. I want to quickly point out that Brainworks included an oscillator here for some unknown reason. This is basically like an LFO that you can use to create a tremolo type effect. I have no idea what this has to do with cleaning up a master, so I just ignore this section completely. Let's quickly compare BX refinement to the almighty Oak Sound Soothe 2. Soothe 2 doesn't seem to be pulling out as much from the mid-range as BX refinement. I'm going to boost the mid-range, forcing Soothe 2 to clamp down harder in that range. Interesting. I find I have to really push Soothe 2 harder to get a similar response as refinement. It sounds good, but I'm finding something to sound a little smoother in refinement. I'd always want Soothe 2 for deep corrections, but BX refinement seems to nail the harshness right out of the box. I'm impressed. I would say if I needed to send this master out today, I'd choose what BX refinement is doing to the mix. I could insert it, turn a couple knobs, and the problem is fixed. I have little doubt I can get there with Soothe 2, but it would take a long time of fiddling around, and I risk ear fatigue the whole time. It's impressive that Brainworks figured out a quick, concise harshness solution almost a decade ago. I love this plugin. It's become a staple in my mastering chain for years because it's simple and it just works. If you're looking for a great harshness correction plugin, and you see this on sale for $29, it's officially $199 normally, then grab it. If you have a Plugin Alliance subscription, then check it out. You won't be sorry. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and head over to palebluedot.ca and sign up for my newsletter. Until next time, mix well.
I was thrilled to get an email today from Wavesfactory announcing a new addition to the likes of Soothe 2, Gullfoss, SmartEQ, and more. The surprisingly banal titled Equalizer. This promises to intelligently and automatically EQ your tracks, so let's see how it stacks up. This is Equalizer. What it basically does is split up your signal into 32 individual bands, which will then analyze the input gain for each band and automatically raise or lower the level to get them to unity gain, essentially making all frequencies have the same level. I would say that most of the automatic spectral correction plugins work with a similar paradigm. They listen for frequencies that stick out and try to adjust them for more balanced signal. Basically, a series of dynamic EQs. Then it's up to us engineers to determine whether these adjustments are desirable and make appropriate changes. So let's hear it in action. Let's try it on electric piano. When you insert it, you'll see this spectral graph start reacting to the audio. This is similar to Soothe 2, where you usually see some kind of corrective activity right away. I just gotta say, I love this gorgeous GUI. The animation is wonderful, plus it's minimal and easy to understand, although there's one feature that isn't very obvious right away, but we'll see that shortly. So what it's doing here is cutting widely around 300 Hz, which makes sense. A lot of body and mud can live there in electric pianos, and it's boosting quite a bit in the highs. I like this. The electric piano sounds more present now, and similar to how I would EQ this in a mix. Let's explore the controls. The first, most important control to notice is the amount. As you can probably guess, this controls the strength of the overall cutting and boosting. I found it sounds best in the default 50% to 60% range, and you can start to hear artifacts at higher settings, especially on complex material. The cut and boost controls are useful for balancing what Equalizer is doing to the signal. Many times, you just want to cut the mud out of a signal. If you reduce boost to 0, now Equalizer is purely a subtractive EQ. Or if you only want to add highs, say, then reduce the cut. You also get delta solo buttons, so you can hear exactly what frequencies Equalizer is attenuating. Very nice to have. Attack and release can give you more control over how quickly Equalizer reacts to the signal. Personally, I found these usually work best at the default position, and the developer confirmed this with me, saying that you only need to adjust the attack on percussive material. I like how this is clearing up a little mud and controlling the subs, with a little high-end boost. But you can hear how wonky this drum loop gets if I push it too hard. Actually, I kind of like this. This could make for a great creative effect too. And you can set it crazy like this, then use the mix control to blend in the more compressed effect. Nice. For now, I'll leave it at the more conservative settings. Rounding off the controls, you have a mid-side control where you can choose to apply the effect to only the mid or the side channel. Default is normal stereo processing, here at 50%. And there's a tilt feature, which basically allows you to quickly push the processing into brightening or darkening the sound. It's useful if you find the signal you just want to quickly get it a little bit darker or a little bit brighter. So, you remember earlier when I mentioned there's a hidden feature? Here it is. Say you have a guitar and it sounds a little dull. Once again, adding Equalizer makes it sound better. But what's this over here? It's boosting a bunch of low end below 100 Hz. I don't really want any low end added to this guitar. It just risks muddying up the mix, and it isn't integral to the tone. So what do? You can turn off the boost here, but you lost that wonderful sparkle it added on the top end, so what do? That's when the per band control comes in. You can take the mouse and draw your own response curves. Check this out. These lovely little nodes represent each of the 32 bands. And if you draw on the top of the graph, this will increase the amount of processing. Or decrease the amount of processing if you draw below the line. So in this case, I just run my mouse across the bottom, in that base area, below 100. And now it's not processing on the low end anymore. That's great. And if you don't like what you did, you can hold Option or Alt, and it'll snap the filters back to 0. Very cool. Let's try it on the bass. Well, that's great. It's adding some nice top end to the synth. And again, reducing some of the mud. Now I have it on all the tracks in this project. Let's A B. I find Equalizer is adding a little more air and depth to the mix. It's subtle and easier to hear in good monitors or headphones, but it's nice. And you can even use Equalizer on a full mix. Let's check it out. Again, at default settings, I really like how this brings the mix back to life a bit. And I will state, I don't like this on a full mix or drums as much past 60%. Transients and frequencies start to leap out and sound unnatural. So be careful when mastering. But I really like what it's doing around the 50 to 60%. I'm impressed with Wavesfactory Equalizer. We've had a few affordable challengers come along in the spectral correction space, but I think this might be the best for under $100. It's better than RESO, not as harsh as Smooth Operator, not as difficult as DSEQ, and cheaper than Soothe 2, SmartEQ, or Gullfoss. Those pricier plugins offer more features and deeper control, but for most people, Equalizer is the perfect place to start, offering quick, simple solutions to correct mud and resonances in tracks. Grab it while it's cheap. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, mix well. Techivation released a new dynamic resonance suppressor to fix mud and unwanted harshness in your mix. But how does it stand up to Soothe 2 and the big boys? Let's take a look. But first, please like and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon below. Plus, you can get awesome plugin deals at Plugin Boutique with my affiliate link, and head over to palebluedot.ca for freebies. This is M-Clarity, and once again, it gets the default house Techivation graphical interface treatment with a giant control dial and neighboring gain meters, plus important parameters below. You also get tool tips to help explain what everything is. And for those of you who've used Oak Sound Soothe 2, the controls will be quite familiar. Suppression controls the overall amount of the dynamic suppression effect. Intensity controls the scale of the resonances that M-Clarity targets. At lower settings, it'll work more on smaller resonances while maintaining the overall balance. At higher settings, it'll make more wideband corrections, affecting the average tone more. Focus further refines the correction by allowing you to focus more on the main spectrum at lower settings or just the strongest resonances at higher settings. In other words, it gets more picky the higher it goes. Here's an example. I have an old lousy mix with lots of resonances in the mids here. If I put focus all the way to 0, then turn up the suppression, the signal becomes much less harsh. But if I turn up the focus, more of the original signal comes back in, as M-Clarity is only looking for the strongest frequencies. You can really hear the fizzy tones in the guitars come back in here. It's still being processed, just not as broadly. And also we can adjust the intensity to suppress the resonances more broadly by turning it up. On a nasty mix like this, it seems to help make the overall spectrum less grating, but more conservative settings would be recommended in most cases. Again, these three controls are quite similar to Soothe 2, so users of that will feel right at home. And we can see what M-Clarity is doing to the mix with the spectrum analyzer, mostly reducing frequencies in the mid-range, and when I switched to peak view from average, it seemed to be correcting a bump in the low mids too, generally evening things out. Good stuff. You also get soft and hard processing, which is pretty self-explanatory. I find there is a subtle difference between these two settings, a little harder to hear than other plugins. If I use the difference audition, nice feature to have, I can hear a small jump of about 2 to 3 dB between the two settings, but I only hear the difference in processing at very high amounts. I found I stuck with the hard processing the whole time, and it doesn't sound that hard. Thankfully, M-Clarity allows you to focus the processing on a specific range. Now, it doesn't give you a full equalizer to control the response, but it's usually only a small range we're looking to control resonances in anyway, and this is a simple solution. You can adjust, move, or enter precise amounts. You can audition the filter here as well to hear what it's doing. Great for finding your annoying frequencies, or to avoid affecting your hi-hats and cymbals. Other features of note are, you can shift processing from left-right or stereo, or switch to mid-side mode and apply the processing more or exclusively to the mono or stereo image. Very useful if you hear your resonances are coming from a reverb in the stereo field, for example. So my first impression of M-Clarity is, this sounds quite good. It does seem to respect the tone and dynamics of the original signal. I don't hear a lot of pumping or artifacts like I did with Wavesfactory Equalizer at aggressive settings. It actually reminds me of one specific plugin, and it begs the question, how does this stand up to Soothe 2? I'm going to take a minute here and see if I can match them. I'll set Soothe 2's low and high cut filters to 300 Hz and 3 kHz, just like M-Clarity. Interesting. I find Soothe 2 works on the high end a bit more, even with that 3 kHz high cut filter on. And something to note, there is actually a gain output adjustment over here on the left. I didn't see this at first. I expected this to be over on the right where the output meter is, but here it is. I find the gain compensation is good on M-Clarity, but I kind of needed to adjust a little bit to get it to parity. Okay, so I can actually get these pretty close. There's a high-end resonance on the drone guitar lead that Soothe 2 completely eliminated. But M-Clarity is very comparable in how it cleans up the bulk of the mid-range. And if you find you're losing too much mid-range, increasing focus can help you recover more of your original tone. It's always a balance with these things. It's a cliche, but you gotta use your ears with these dials to get it sounding right. Again, I'm really impressed with how hard you can push M-Clarity without hearing any nasty artifacts. I find Soothe can sound like mush pretty quickly. So this is a very nice feature for mastering. Well, in my last episode, I thought I'd found the low-cost alternative to Soothe 2, Wavesfactory Equalizer. Watch my video on this if you haven't already. But now, M-Clarity has to be considered. They both have very similar pricing, and they're both on sale as of the publishing of this video, and I'll post an exclusive coupon code for 30% of all Techivation products below if you need some time to think about it. But M-Clarity's focus on simplicity and, well, clarity really makes it a desirable option. I found it to be far less artifacty at higher settings than Equalizer. And sure, you don't have the extra EQ nodes that Soothe and Equalizer offer, but the very clean sound, even at strong settings, really sets this apart. So for those of you looking for a good resonance suppressor, definitely grab this and check out the demo. Between this and Equalizer, spectral correction is really coming to the masses. Use my links below to purchase M-Clarity, or my affiliate link for Plugin Boutique, and check out my other spectral correction videos in this playlist. Let me know what you thought of M-Clarity in the comments below. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, mix well. Thanks to everyone for making my previous video on the free Ozone EQ a real hit. Go check it out if you haven't already. And thanks for all the great comments. I'm really near my goal of 5,000 subscribers, so please subscribe. Today, I'll look at the deceptively simple Ozone Clarity module and compare it to the industry standard Oak Sound Soothe 2, and also Ozone's other spectral correction plugin, Stabilizer. Which one is best? I'll let you know at the end of the video. But first, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And use my affiliate link below at Plugin Boutique to grab their crazy deals. What is Ozone Clarity? Basically, it splits your signal into 256 spectral bands, then uses flat noise as a reference to adjust the bands towards a perfect signal, essentially taming resonances and clashing frequencies so you can unmask content in your mixes. I'll explain the noise references more in a minute. Using Clarity is really simple. You can just insert it and turn up the amount button, and you'll immediately see the spectral bands doing their thing. Right away, we can see that it's doing a lot of subtractive EQ in the low mids, and adding more in the high end. Like many other spectral EQs like this, I find it tends to brighten the sound. There are two ways of adjusting the brightness or darkness of the signal. The first way is to use this slider to adjust the range of processing. If I move this to the left, no processing is happening after this line. The same thing is true for the low-end slider here. But note, the processing only goes as low as 300 Hz. Izotope seems to be definitely saying that clarity is only for the typical problem areas of the low mids. But oddly, processing still goes all the way up to 20 kHz, so I guess they're saying high end is allowed, but not low end? What if you have a problem around 200 Hz? I find this limitation curious. But hey, 300 Hz is where a lot of problems lay and could be effective for most mixes. Another way you can adjust the brightness is with the tilt slider. In the middle default position, the spectrum is referencing pink noise, which is a mix of white and brown noise, so kind of a perfect mid-range. If you move the slider up, the reference shifts towards white noise or a brighter signal. And if you move the slider down, it moves towards brown noise, which makes for a darker signal. This could be great for an overly bright mix or to tame the sibilant symbols you get with a lot of these spectral correctors. This is really powerful for shaping the sound of your overall mix and is a powerful tool for mastering. With just a few moves, you can brighten or darken your mix while still cleaning up clashing frequencies. Another important section here is the attack and release settings. Basically, this controls how quickly clarity reacts to the signal. Longer attack times will let more of the original signal through, and longer release times will keep the processing on longer. You can see this reflected in the spectral display. When I increase the attack times, the animation moves more slowly. But if you push it too far, the processing can sound unnatural. I find it sounds best at the default 100, between 100 and 300. And the attack between 50 to 100. After that, there really isn't much left to discuss about this plugin, apart from Ozone's gain matching feature, which corrects for any change in volume from Clarity's EQing. It's a great feature to have, although I find Clarity doesn't really increase the gain very much on its own, since it's balancing the signal anyway. So how does this hold up against Soothe 2? I think the biggest difference to point out here is that Soothe is purely subtractive EQ. Soothe 2 will reduce what it detects as unbalanced frequencies and phase, but you can't tell it to boost frequencies. So if you're looking to make your signal brighter by adding information, Soothe wouldn't be your first choice. Mind you, if you reduce some of the mud in your mix, it will tend to sound brighter, or at least clearer, so keep that in mind. So yeah, Clarity makes the signal much brighter, whereas Soothe 2 is more subtle, as always. If we want a full spectrum corrector, then there is another option in Ozone that we can turn to. Ozone's stabilizer is similar to Clarity, but as I understand it, stabilizer is an adaptive EQ, in the style of SmartEQ and Gullfoss, that dynamically plots the EQ nodes to correct the input signal. whereas clarity is an FFT EQ, breaking up the signal into spectral bins. But they do similar things, and Stabilizer offers EQ correction over the whole frequency range. Sound pretty similar. The cool thing about Stabilizer is you can switch to make EQ cuts only, which is great. It doesn't seem to do much on this track though. I suspect Stabilizer is geared more towards adding than subtracting. You can also use the low, mid, and high amount sliders to adjust the response. If Stabilizer is too bright, then you can lower this all the way down to 0 if you want, and no processing is in that range at all. So I'd say that Stabilizer is great for adjusting the overall spectrum of your mix, especially if you want some content added back in, like in a dull mix. Clarity is great for getting rid of mud and boxiness, and is super easy to use. Its response is more similar to Soothe 2, since they operate from a similar FFT bin foundation, and you can indeed get some clarity in your mix with this plugin. I find myself wishing it extended lower into the bass range, but I respect that it's confidently set to work in a specific range, and if you have Ozone, you can reach for Stabilizer if you want a full spectrum response. As always, if you have the money, Soothe 2 is excellent, but I think for most mixers and producers who need a quick fix for mixes and instruments, Ozone 11 is a great choice. For less than Soothe 2, you get the full spectrum Stabilizer plugin in Ozone 11 Standard, plus a lot of other great tools. And for around the same overall price as Soothe 2, you can get the entire Ozone 11 Advanced suite, which has clarity, Stabilizer, and the full mastering suite. If you're interested, use my plugin boutique links above to get Ozone. They're on sale for 25 to 30% off as of this writing. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out the deals in my links below. Until next time, mix well. In my previous video, I covered the new Ozone 11 Clarity module. Go check that out first if you haven't already. And I complained that it only went as low as 300 Hz, leaving me wondering why they did this. Well, thanks to viewer Bill Podolock for pointing out that Ozone low-end focus takes care of the 20 to 300 Hz range. In my COVID haze, I forgot to check the rest of the modules, and now that I've spent some time with it, I can say it's actually a little different than Clarity in some very intriguing ways. But first, please like and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon below. Plus you can get awesome plugin deals at Plugin Boutique with my affiliate link, and head over to paleblue.ca for freebies. So when I reviewed Ozone Clarity, I mentioned that it works by splitting up the signal into separate FFT bins, which represent the frequency ranges, and then it adaptively contours them towards a flat noise response. Now looking at low-end focus, I assumed it's the same thing, but simply restricted to up to 300 Hz. But after reading up on it, I'm not so sure. The manual is shy about saying exactly how the internals work, but there are some important differences. Let's take a look at each feature and see how to improve your bass. Initially, this looks just like Clarity. We have a spectral analyzer display with handles that restrict the effect processing boundaries. But low-end focus also offers two processing modes, punchy and smooth. And Izotope says that punchy is best for accentuating more percussive low-end material, like kicks and snare bottoms, And Smooth is great for bringing out sustained notes like 808 basses and traditional bass guitars. It defaults to punchy, so let's start with that. To get things started, you can just raise the gain. The manual says this is simply makeup gain, but clearly some processing is already occurring. It sounds nice. I'm already thinking this could be a great replacement for Waves R bass if you're thinking of leaving Waves. But let's unleash the real features. The contrast button is the real big deal here. What this does is increase or decrease the difference between the low-level content and high-level content. What does this mean? Basically, low-end focus can adjust the difference between the quieter parts and the louder parts of the signal. When you're in the negative, it's boosting the quieter parts, similar to low-level upwards compression, like you get with the famous OTT compression. So on the way up, it's contrasting the difference between the high peaks and the low signal. This is a very powerful feature. You can sneak into a final mix and adjust not only the general bass level, but the entire feel of the low-end activity. Let's check it out. So now that we raised the contrast, not only do we have a richer low end, but the kick and attack of the bass are becoming more prominent. This is great for getting more punch into a mix, and it sounds quite natural. If you crank it up to 100, you can hear some artifacts. So it's always best to use just enough of the processing with an effect like this. It seems like you can get away with about the 50 to 70 range until you hear artifacts. Here's where it gets interesting. Lowering contrast decreases the difference between the high and low levels, much like saturation or analog compression. This can be great for gluing the low end together or taming transient elements. That's a nice subtle effect. I like how the low end feels thick and together. The kick drum still has punch, but feels connected to the bass more, and the bass feels smoother. It's very nice. I'd probably stick with this setting for the song. I feel like this plugin is powerful enough just in punchy mode, but there's also smooth mode. Let's try it on this song. So this is interesting. This is the smooth mode, which works better on sustained notes, but you can still increase the contrast between the high and the low level, or decrease it for a more compressed sound. Again, I can see reaching for this for a more glued together, cohesive low end. Another great feature is you can audition the process signal with the solo button here. And you can drag these sliders to change the frequency range, or you can drag the sliders in unison by dragging in the empty area. great for sweeping frequencies. This can help you find the area you want to enhance, like say the kick drum. And if that's not enough, you also get the standard Ozone 11 processing choices now. You can apply low-end focus to the mid or mono signal, or to the side or stereo signal. But what's really interesting here is that you can apply processing to just the transient signal, or the sustained signal, or both at the same time. This is fascinating because low-end focus already works with the low-level and high-level signal with the contrast slider. But this means you can apply more contrast to just the transients, or the sustained part of the signal, giving you even more control over shaping your mix. If we solo each section, you can hear how it's splitting the signal. So on the transient side, we're getting mostly the attack of the kick and bass guitar. A little bit of the guitar and some other elements that are in the lower range too. Then when we solo the sustained side, we hear the longer notes of the bass guitar, almost like a ducked sidechain signal. So we can do things like bring up the attack on the bass and smooth out the kick, or bring up the contrast on the sustained side perhaps. The possibilities are endless here, but could really help rescue a weak mix at the mastering stage. Well, I'm really impressed with Ozone low-end focus. I actually find this to be more powerful than Ozone Clarity, since it gives you more options for shaping the sound and gets dramatic results quickly. Ozone 11 provides a wealth of spectral correction plugins now, and this goes to the top of my list. I'll be using this often during mixing and mastering. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and use my Plugin Boutique affiliate link to get great plugin deals. Until next time, mix well. Do you need to fix nasty resonances and help things sit better in your mix? Well, WA Productions has suddenly entered the resonance suppression ring with its new plugin D-Res. D-Res is on sale for only $9.90 US and promises some unique features that other suppressors simply don't have. But does it stand up to the big guns like Soothe 2? I'm going to do a quick plugin play today and find out. But first, please like, subscribe, and share, and watch the video to the end. It really helps the channel. And use my Plugin Boutique affiliate link on screen or in the description to grab D-Res and other crazy deals from Plugin Boutique. So this was a bit of a surprise when I opened KVR today and noticed that there was a new challenger in the resonance suppression market. I'm familiar with WA Productions. They've been around for a while and have a variety of plugins that I mostly forgot about. So it was surprising to see them enter this competitive field. Let's hear how it sounds. I have a rock mix here with a guitar stack that has a nasty resonance that you might not notice at first. So simply insert D-Res and you have a bunch of settings here. The first thing you can do is use the listen button to preview the range where the effect will be applied. D-Res only operates on the 1K to 8K spectrum where resonances and masking typically occur. Okay, so this is like when you sweep an EQ with a very narrow band. I will say that this isn't the best way to identify resonances because with an EQ this narrow, everything sounds like a resonance. Yeah, this could trick your ears very easily. For me, I find around 3.1K is usually where I have issues with my guitar. So you can click this here and enter the value. I'll leave it there. And then you simply pull down on the center dial to start cutting the resonances. That sounds better immediately. Let's bypass. Do you hear that whistling tone disappear? This is such an improvement, and it's going to help prevent frequency masking in the mid-range. Something slightly different than plugins like Soothe and Equalizer is that DRES defaults to non-dynamic suppression. If you want it to act dynamically to the signal, i.e. only suppressing the resonances when they occur, dial in some dynamics here. You can see up here in the spectrum display where DRES is acting. This will lead to more transparent processing. So far, this is like all the other resonance suppressors out there, but here's a neat trick. If you find that the processing is making your track sound dull, or robbing it of some of its character in that frequency, you can use Compensate to boost the adjacent frequencies to slightly brighten your track, like so. There, I think that adds some punch back to the guitars, while still applying a healthy dose of resonance suppression. This could allow you to hit the processing even harder, knowing you can add some life back later. WA also added another trick to add life to your track if processing has gone too far. There's an exciter up here that will add harmonic saturation to the highs, so you're adding new information to the highs instead of just broad EQ boosting. This is very cool. I can really change the tone of the guitar here. This could be great on vocals and synths too. Speaking of synths, let's switch to a synthwave track. I got a pad here that takes up a lot of frequencies and could probably sit better in the mix. Let's use Listen to see if we can improve this. Interesting. At 1K, the resonance is in key with the song, which could indicate where masking issues may occur. Let's try 1K. Not really improving things. I think 2K might be a better place to go. Yes, there we go. Now those synth bells are coming through the pad more. Nice. Another unique option they added here is the tone button. This is meant to quickly thin out tracks like pads and strings that play more of a supporting role in your mix, but tend to cause frequency clashes. They say it applies a convolution response, which I'm not sure what they mean by that. Convolution is technically the multiplying of frequency spectra of two sources and attenuating those frequencies. So let's say it's doing that. In Plugin Doctor, we can see it applies a rather drastic EQ curve of mostly cuts, then some boosting in the highs. Basically, thinning out your track. Yeah, that sounds good. You can still hear the pad, it's not interfering with the bass at all. It's pretty cool. And while I would always choose to EQ my own tracks to do this could be great for super quick mixing or a second opinion. But I find DRES's main suppression function does the trick just fine. It also includes the standard low-cut filter, exactly like the stock EQ in your DAW, in case you want to high-pass your instruments, right here in the plugin. Feels a little superfluous, but it's there if you need it. A really useful feature here is the octave dial. Very often, resonances occur at multiple frequencies relative to the fundamental. This allows you to add processing to harmonic frequencies that may be happening at lower levels. If you turn this down, the lower you turn this, the more harmonic processing you get. Again, we can see this here in Plugin Doctor. You can see it's applying the dips to every harmonic interval. Experiment with this to see if it helps your signal. You also have a Q parameter here to widen or narrow the processing. And you also have mid-side processing, which allows you to independently process the mono and stereo image. This is great for mastering or tackling resonances and reverbs and stereo effects. And you also have oversampling, in case you want to be assured that the processing isn't creating aliasing. Now, let's compare it to the Resonance God, Oak Sound Soothe 2. Right away we can hear that Soothe 2 is doing something. That's the great thing about it, it just works right away. I'll enter the same frequency on both plugins. To my ears, DRES is doing a better job at maintaining the highs on the guitars. Soothe sounds a little darker even though I'm not letting it process the highs at all. I'm sure I could tweak Soothe to get it closer, but it's pretty impressive that I can get a great sound so quickly with DRES. and for a fraction of the price. And at 1/10 the price of Soothe, this plugin is a must-have. Its resonance suppression is very effective, and it goes beyond many other plugins by offering some sweet options to restore your signal, and a couple tricks to actually aid in balancing tracks in your mix. So I declare this a plugin emergency. Go grab this now while it's only $9 at Plugin Boutique. Even when it goes back to full price, it's cheaper than RESO, Equalizer, and most other resonance suppression plugins. Great job, WA Productions. Go grab this now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. I love hearing from you. And use my affiliate links to support the channel. Until next time, mix well. Due to popular demand from comments on my last video, I'm going to check out Hornet Plugin's new Sleek plugin. Sleek seems to be designed as a direct competitor to the holy Soothe 2 plugin. But does it stand up? And should you get it? Let's test it out. But first, please like, subscribe, and share, and watch the video to the end. It really helps the channel. And use my Plugin Boutique affiliate link on screen or in the description to grab DRes and other crazy deals from Plugin Boutique. Hornet is a cool indie developer who's been churning out unique plugins for over a decade now. He makes some intriguing stuff. I really like a lot of the mixing tools, and I use Hornet View Meter Mark IV in every mix for instant gain staging. So I was excited to see that he released a spectral correction plugin called Sleek. I would say it's pretty clear that the interface is inspired by Soothe, with 4 EQ nodes and contextual parameters for them in the lower left that change when you click on the EQ nodes. Pulling up on the nodes increases processing, and pulling down results in less processing, just like in Soothe 2 and other spectral correctors. Plus, you have some global controls on the right for adjusting the response times and intensity. Let's try it out on a track. I'm going to use the same guitars as my last video, which has a resonance in the 3K area. Let's insert Sleek. Okay, I definitely hear and see some processing occurring. And I'm not crazy about the sound. I'm not sure about you, but I hear some watery artifacts, and it sounds a bit thinner than before. It seems to be working mostly in the low end. Let's try increasing the processing where I want it, around 3K. Whoa. Oh no, that sounds even worse. I'm really hearing those spectral phasing artifacts now. This is not good. I'm going to insert Soothe 2 just as a reference. Yep, Soothe 2 sounds great even at modest settings. It's nailing that resonance at 3K, and I'm not hearing unpleasant artifacts. Let's see if we can do anything about Sleek's issues. Maybe I'll lower the attack and release. No, that's worse. You probably want a longer release so the effects stay on anyway. We can use the delta to hear what the processing is doing. Weird. It almost sounds like it's pulsing rhythmically. Spectral deltas will always sound strange, but this seems very odd indeed. Let's compare it to Soothe. Yeah, Soothe isn't pulsing, It's just a steady attenuation of the signal in accordance with its spectral content. Let's remove some of the low-end processing, maybe that'll help. Whoa! Whoa! Did you see that? The EQ nodes just jumped to the top of the screen. I just clicked on them and they jumped to the left of the screen. This happened earlier when I first tested it, but I thought maybe it was a one-time thing. Okay, this is a serious bug. I'm sure it's easy to fix, but this isn't ready for prime time. So it's at this point that I contacted Severio, the developer of Hornet plugins. He wrote me a nice long email explaining how SEEK works. His position is that it's important to understand how the plugin works to get the best results. Fair enough. Basically, as I understand it, SLEEK creates an FFT of the signal, essentially dividing it into mathematical bins that can be controlled. It averages a copy of this signal, then looks for differences or potential resonances, and that's the purple animation you see here, the delta between the original and the ideal average. Then you see the actual correction of the signal above. He also went into voices and voice stealing, but I think I've probably lost half the audience already. A crucial point he made was that he explored FFT solutions that are similar to Soothe 2, but he wanted SLEEK to be low latency. In fact, SLEEK reports 0 latency in Cubase, as opposed to the 42 milliseconds that Soothe introduces. Now, this is a noble goal, but to what end? I suspect it's this trade-off for 0 latency that's harming SLEEK's sound. If we need latency to get accurate FFT spectral correction, then why sacrifice it at all? Generally speaking, we don't want to be running spectral FFT correction plugins during tracking anyway. And during mixing and mastering, a little latency is perfectly acceptable. So I think Hornet has made a Faustian bargain here by trading 0 latency instead of more complex FFT processing. And here's the real problem. Most of us will want to quickly open and insert a plugin that will magically fix harshness in our audio. We love tools like Soothe and DRES because we get results quickly. Sure, there are dozens of complex formulae going on in the background, and Lord knows I love learning about FFT bins so you don't have to. But I suspect most of us do not want to tediously adjust and research FFT bins just to get inadequate results. So what can I say? I simply don't like this plugin. It has plenty of promise, and there's no doubt that Hornet knows his stuff, but the implementation feels shoddy. He's a great guy and I'd love to recommend this, but I just can't trust my audio with this plugin right now. I'm all for his gain staging tools though, go check those out. As of this video, I'd recommend WA Productions DRES, Techivation M-Clarity, Baby Audio Smooth Operator, or Wavesfactory Equalizer if you're looking for affordable Soothe 2 alternatives. Check out my spectral correction playlist to see my reviews of all these plugins and more. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. I love hearing from you. And use my affiliate links to support the channel. Until next time, mix well.